This is MyBlend Stories, and I'm Jeff Gerlach. Since 2002, Melody Arabo has been a third grade teacher at Keith Elementary in the Walled Lake Consolidated School District. But this year is a little bit different. In May, she was named the Michigan Teacher of the Year for the 2014-2015 school year. She chatted with me about how she might have been the last to know that she had been chosen as Teacher of the Year. That while she's fully embracing being in the Eagle's Nest of education, she also needed to stay connected with her students in Walled Lake. We talked about blended learning strategies, building a culture of collaboration, and we got a sneak preview of her new book, Diary of a Real Bully. This is her story. First off, thanks for being here today with us.
Thanks for having me.
This morning, I was watching a YouTube video of Superintendent Flanagan up on stage at Keith Elementary School. He introduced you as the Teacher of the Year, and as you came to the stage, I got the feeling that that was the first time you heard the news as well. What was going through your mind in that whole process? What was that like?
Right, it's actually a funny story. We had gotten an email about 2 weeks prior that the state superintendent was going to be visiting our school. And I had just gotten finished interviewing as one of 3 finalists for Michigan Teacher of the Year a couple weeks prior to that. And when we finished the interview, they said, we won't tell anyone anything. It would just be some sort of surprise to make the announcement. So when I got the email that Superintendent Flanagan was coming to our school, my heart dropped, started shaking, kind of thought, oh my gosh, could that be what this is for? I shared that with my husband. He got all excited. He said, well, I don't know, maybe. But then he went to my school, because we live right behind my school, and he dropped my daughter off one day, and he and my principal are friends, and my principal told him that was going to happen, and he said, well, I think she's kind of onto it, so, let's come up with a plan. So they enacted all sorts of things to throw me off, including, like saying, oh, he visits schools every month, and, he's going to go to a couple other schools in Walled Lake, just really trying to throw me off. So I had it in the back of my mind, but I wasn't 100% sure. So fast forward to the day that he was there. And, it was a big deal, and the whole school was prepared, and, they were going to do a walkthrough and go and visit in classrooms and things like that. And then they were going to have this big assembly to celebrate our 50th anniversary. And so we funneled into the gym, and I was talking to a reporter, and so was one of my colleagues, who's one of my best friends. And she could see the back of the auditorium or the gym, and I was facing the front. All of a sudden, she said, why is Elliot here? That's my husband. And she got all confused, and I hadn't said anything to her about the process or being a finalist. It was really something I hadn't mentioned to anyone. And then she's like, and are those your sisters? So that's when I realized that this was really about to happen. I started shaking again. I sat down. That happened right as the assembly was about to begin. So I thought, oh my gosh, what do I do? Do I look back? Do I acknowledge this? I don't want to ruin the surprise, or I don't know what's about to happen. So I just sat forward, and I did not look back at all. And the assembly starts, and I could tell like some eyes were on me, and I just kept sitting there really quiet. And then my son started crying. So I know it's my son crying. Everybody else knows it's my son crying. They're all wondering why I didn't turn around and, look back to see. So it was a little bit awkward, but at the same time, I knew that if I had turned, I would start crying. I knew that it was, it was just going to be super emotional. So I just stayed forward. And it was probably a good 20 minutes before they actually made the announcement. The beauty of it, and the reason it did seem like such a surprise when I went up there was, at that point, I just thought that it was my husband and my sisters and probably my parents. What I did not realize was that there were about 50 of my closest family and friends there. So that was a shock. I had friends who had come out and driven an hour away that I went to high school with that were there. My sisters had taken their kids out of school, so all my nieces and nephews were there. Aunts, uncles, best friends, cousins. So when I went up there, I was already in shock about what was happening. And then to see that, it was such a great surprise. It was something that my principal and my husband had worked together on, and it just made that day even more spectacular and special and surreal.
If you weren't in tears, you were about as close as you could get to that,
No, there was
right?
a lot of tears that day. I couldn't believe that something that big was happening. It wasn't something I ever aspired toward, So just to be standing up there with the state superintendent of Michigan and the kids started chanting my name, it was just this almost out of body experience of, I can't believe something of this magnitude is happening to me right now. And I can't believe that all these people knew about it and were there to support me. I started to think about, right then and there, they were asking me to say a few words. So I started to think about what this role means and the influence that can come with it, the experiences that can come with it. And the best way to really put it is that suddenly people are interested in what you have to say.
Yeah.
So from that moment where they were asking me to speak, I had to think about, what do I want my message to be this year? So there was a lot going through my mind, but it was really just trying to take it all in and understand the magnitude of what had just happened and what was about to happen for the next year, which has been even bigger than I expected. So
that's a perfect segue to talk about, beyond just being called the Michigan Teacher of the Year, what does that mean to you?
I had felt for a while that I just wanted something more. So the timing of it was actually perfect. I had become a leader in my school and really started to share and collaborate with my colleagues. And then that led to, sharing within my district. And then I did a teacher leadership academy that connected me to different counties. And then I felt a little bit stuck. I really love the idea of teacher leadership. And I feel like a lot of times you have to leave the classroom in order to continue that path. Maybe go into administration, maybe go into curriculum development, policy. There's a number of things that you can do, but you mainly have to leave the classroom. And that's really where my heart is. So I struggled with the idea of, how can I continue to learn and grow and share and have that collaboration with people across many different areas without having to do that. So this really happened at the perfect time. Last school year, I was part of a project called the Master Teacher Project, which was through the NEA and a website called Better Lesson, which was developed by teachers. And we were asked to provide Common Core lessons that would be shared and used across the country. So that was great, because then I got to collaborate with teachers from all over America. And we learned about the Common Core. We had PD, and we went to DC a couple times, and I'm actually going back this weekend for that. So that was kind of another taste of, okay, here's what's more beyond the four walls of my classroom. So when the Michigan Teacher of the Year happened, I really saw it as an opportunity to break through those walls. I started to understand the idea of teacher leadership, this whole concept of teacherpreneurship, thinking about teachers in business and the way that they can kind of expand on their role. So all of those things came to mind, and then through conversations with last year's Michigan Teacher of the Year and through conversations with people who have been in roles that are similar to this, they really helped me see an overwhelming number of possibilities that this year could be. But really what I wanted it to be was, I wanted it to be a voice for teachers. And so I really thought about conversations I've had with colleagues, the way that I feel, the way that I know many teachers feel, things that could go better in our classrooms, things that we want to have more of a say in, like policy, things that we feel could just improve the classroom community for kids. So that's my number one goal. Beyond that is just to learn as much as I can this year, because I have the freedom and the ability to go and observe in different schools and see how different people do things. I've learned a lot about systems and the systems thinking, what's happening at a district level and how all those pieces in place helps the whole system for students. So I've learned about things at the state level. I've learned a ton with the state board meetings and how all of that works. My next step is really to learn more about policy and legislature. So there are so many different pieces to the puzzle of education. And for a long time, I was only able to see my own classroom and maybe even in my own district. So this really has just taken things to the next level for me to understand it from a much broader point of view. And then, how I can share that with other teachers. I really just wish that other teachers could have those experiences. I wish that other teachers could go to state board meetings. I don't really understand why they're during the school day, and that limits that. I wish more of them could be involved in Common Core work and curriculum development, having a say in what types of resources are purchased for us. So my goal is to create more opportunities for teachers to be able to do those things without having to step out of the classroom fully.
You're right. So many people, myself included, have felt like in order to change policy and to really affect greater change in general across education, we have felt like we need to move ourselves into a different role. You saw that a little bit with being the Michigan Teacher of the Year. it's kind of interesting to me that you felt the need to do both. Like you're still an active classroom teacher, right?
Well, no, and that's the part that I struggle with because I had a few options, and it used to be where if you were given this title, then the state would pay for you to be out of the classroom. You'd be on sabbatical for a year and you'd work with the Michigan Department of Ed. And then they lost funding for that years ago. So since then, each Michigan Teacher of the Year has done things differently. Sometimes their district will say, okay, you can be released from the classroom for a year and they'll pay the salary. Sometimes teachers have stayed in the classroom and done this. And that was really my intention, was to be in the classroom and to do as much as I could. But my superintendent really helped me see this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. There were going to be a lot of things that would come my way that I'd have to say no to. And he didn't really want me to have to do that. And so it was something I spent a lot of time on and I struggled with because I'm a teacher to the core, and I've been saying, how important it is to stay in the classroom for me, but I wanted a way to make change. I thought I'd be able to balance all of it. And so I ended up stepping out of the classroom for the year. And technically, I'm an instructional coach for my district, and I'm so grateful to my superintendent for offering that to me and for allowing me to have these experiences this year. Because what it's done is helped me work with teachers, helped me work with students, board members, Department of Ed members, and it's giving me this greater picture of all of the different pieces that have to be in place for schools to work. And I loved so much what I was doing in the classroom, but I love so much what I'm doing now. And I'm desperate to find a way to marry the two, to find a way to continue this professional development journey and to then be able to bring it back to my classroom and to continue to research best practices and put those into place. And, I just feel really strongly that I want to continue to learn and grow with my students and then be able to share that with other teachers. And right now it's hard to do that because there aren't very many opportunities for teachers to work with kids and work with adults. So another one of my goals this year is to find ways to make those happen, not just for me, but for other teachers, because I know so many outstanding teachers that are just aching for the next thing, but they don't want the next thing to be completely leaving the kids. So it has to be a balance of the two. And I feel like with technology and with all the things that we have in place right now, maybe there are things we haven't thought of yet. Maybe there are roles and positions that have never been created yet. So that's part of my goal this year, is to help create those. And I've had great conversations with people at the MDE. I've had great conversations with people from my district. I'm actually going to observe in a district on Wednesday at Harrison High School who have put that into place, where teachers are half-time classroom teachers, half-time instructional coaches. So I'm just really interested in new, innovative ways for teachers to be able to have a voice and make a greater impact, but still stay in the classroom and still have that contact with the students and, be able to stay up to date, stay relevant. And because the theory is so important, we've got all these gurus and the research, and we find out all these great information about best practices and things, but I like to see it in practice.
Yeah.
I'd rather go and watch a teacher using that research in action in her classroom than to go and hear about it from the guru that found it themselves. So there has to be that balance of the theory and practice, and teachers are usually the practice part, and then the people who step out of the classroom are the theory part. I just feel that there should be a way to have both.
Yeah, I mean, it totally makes sense. I've been doing a lot of thinking about this and a lot of writing about this recently. A little bit different context in like the many responsibilities of an educator.
Yes.
And like when you think of the responsibilities of an educator, you have the curriculum mapping side, all the standards and accounting for that, and then ripping those apart and equipping them with pedagogy and thinking, of how I'm going to design this curriculum, right? And then there's the delivery of all of this. And the thing that we neglect the most is that instructional role, that role of the teacher themselves, where you're caring, you're nurturing, providing constant feedback, identifying students' learning gaps, trying to fill those in a personalized way, but still doing it in a time-efficient way, building capacity for your ability to provide that to students. And if you're doing that at the elementary school level, you're doing that for, what would you say, 20 students? 30 students. 32
right. Sometimes.
Right.
Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah, and then at my experience as a secondary teacher, 35, closer to 40, there's all these responsibilities. What I'm trying to get at is I think that relates to what you see with the different roles, where an instructional coach is taken out of the classroom and they're given the privilege to learn from gurus. I like the way that you put that. And I work in a consulting role. I work with teachers one-on-one to build blended environments, and we get in there, and their class is my class, and I want to know as much about it as I can. But I like the idea of, like, if I could still teach some classes, that would help inform my consultation with other teachers.
Well, part of it is I'm learning so many great things, and I go and see these amazing things in action, and then I have nowhere to take them back to. I want to put them into place. I want to implement them. I want to try them out with kids. I want to see what works. I want to change what doesn't. I miss that part of it. Yeah. So I love the learning part. I miss terribly the part where I can actually put it into practice. So it's funny you said something about imparting their wisdom. And that's something I've said a lot lately is a lot of teachers that I've spoken with this year from across the state feel as though they're not seen always as skilled professionals. And so I would like to change that. And I think a lot of teachers would like to change that, where when there is a question or when there is a movement of some sort, that the first thought is, well, let's ask the teachers. Instead of bringing these outside people in to impart their wisdom on us, let's go right to the teachers. And there is definitely things that we need to learn. And we're constantly reading and doing our own research and reading up on what's the newest and the best and the latest. But we are also innovative and coming up with our own ideas and making our own take on certain things that we learn and read. So teachers really just want to share with each other. They want to collaborate with each other. They want to say, hey, this worked really well in my classroom, or hey, I'm struggling here. What are you doing here? You can't really find that so much in a book or in an article. Teachers just need more time together. And we also want to have a voice in the sense where people outside of education or people outside of a classroom would come to us and say, how do you think we should approach this curriculum? What resources do you think we should try to find? I think that there could be much more of that. Teachers would feel more valuable. Teachers would have more of a voice. Teachers could learn from each other. There's just so much expertise within a building, within a district, within the state. So that's where I really feel strongly that we need those more opportunities. And I always feel bad when I say, I don't want to step out of the classroom. I don't want to take away from anything that anybody else is doing. I mean, every role is so important. Our principal, we could never survive without. He's an amazing principal. He is right in there learning with us, growing with us, and he has specific roles that I would never want to have to do. There are so many pieces, like I've said, that are outside of the classroom that are important, and we could never continue without it. But for me personally, I have a strong desire to be in the four walls of my room, to be with the same 30 kids for an entire year and build those relationships. That's the part that I'm really missing right now. I see my students, I'm still at my school every day, but there's just something so great about that bond that you make with the kids when you have them for a whole year, and I feel like I'm missing that. And then, like I said, to be able to go out and learn these things and then actually come and put them into practice. I have all these notes for what I'm going to do next year. I just wish I could do them now. And then I wish that, next year I'm going to have the strong desire to be out there and seeing teachers in action and, working with people like you, working with the state board. I'm going to miss that so much. So I think this is a good time where we have all of these options and tools available to us where we can expand and kind of change the structure of schools enough to where teachers can have the best of both worlds. And teachers that want that, I think some teachers are focused on their classroom and some teachers really want to expand and branch out.
Everyone plays a role, right?
Yes.
I'm interested in the collaborative environments that you feel are necessary for teachers to be able to collaborate. Frankly, it's easy for us to talk like teachers need more time.
Yes.
Need more time to collaborate. Put them in a room, they'll do great things. But I think both you and I know collaboration isn't as simple as putting people in a space, right?
Right.
Have you given a lot of thought of how we can intentionally cultivate collaborative learning environments for teachers?
Definitely. I actually just had a conversation with somebody from my district a few days ago about this. And I definitely don't have all the answers, but I asked for a conversation to begin. And I asked for that conversation to include teachers from across our district who see themselves as leaders and who are viewed as leaders, but perhaps haven't had as many opportunities as maybe I have. I have this opportunity right now. I had the opportunity to do the Teacher Leadership Academy. I had the opportunity to work with the Master Teacher Project. There are some phenomenal teachers in my district who are doing amazing things in their classroom and who want to have those opportunities, but just haven't found that way. And sometimes I think about how I ended up with certain things that, was almost ironic. They weren't things that I had set out to do. So I've asked for our district to start a conversation with teachers and to start to synergize and think outside the box and think about things that haven't been done before that we could do that would help teachers collaborate more. So I get to work really closely with my third grade team at school, and I'm super close with them, and we have this great relationship and trust, and we share and we create things together. But I want to do that with more people. I want to know how they're doing that in third grade in a different city. I want to know how they're doing that in third grade in California.
Right.
I mean, we promote the use of technology with our students so much to be able to use technology to make an impact on the world. We have that right at our fingertips. So Twitter, I've gotten so involved in Twitter, and I actually joined Twitter out of compliance. It was something that my district was really, promoting and saying, like, let's do this.
Compliance.
I hate to use that word, but when you hear somebody from your district saying Twitter, get on Twitter, get involved, you do it. You do it. And I didn't really know what it would lead to. But I did it, and I thought, okay, let me just see what this is about. And now I'm on Twitter every day, and I'm following 2,000 people, and I have 1,100 followers. And this is like this professional learning network that I've created. And it's amazing when I go to a conference and I meet somebody that I've been following on Twitter. We already have that connection. I know what their background is. I know what their strengths are, because that's what Twitter's all about, is sharing those things. It's efficient, it's effective, it's very quick information. So I refer to a lot of the articles that I read. Oh, I read this, and they're just really practical. So that's one way. I actually did a little challenge on my blog for teachers to take a Twitter challenge. And if they're already on it, to maybe get 3 or 4 other teachers to join them to see, what it's all about. So we have that at our fingertips. We have YouTube. I suggested, why can't we have a district YouTube channel? Teachers could videotape things that they feel would be beneficial for other teachers and just upload it. And teachers have the discretion to go on there and see what they're interested in. And then they have that connection with that teacher. They can reach out and say, hey, I want to learn more. Or, hey, this is similar to what I'm doing. Let's connect. So it's really just about moving the walls of the school completely and making things visible for other people. So that idea of the open classroom, we have so many opportunities to do that. We have Edmodo, we have Facebook, we have Instagram. There's so many things out there that I've heard about that I want to try out and that I want to see in action, but it gives teachers that chance to share without being in the same room as somebody else. So that's where I really feel like we could move towards. We can recreate positions for teachers. We can have teachers who still work in the classroom and then work with professional development. There's a lot of districts that are doing that. We can have I've taken on a student teacher a few times, and part of that is so that when they're lead teaching, I can go off and explore and see other teachers in action. So I just think there are a lot of things that could be changed or that we could utilize to help make this easier for teachers instead of trying to have to connect on our own or do these things on our own. So that's where I see. I've even talked with people from the Department of Ed about just restructuring schools, restructuring the day. Somebody showed me a infographic picture of the amount of minutes in a school day that are spent teacher to student, and how in the United States that's the highest number. So when the students are at school, we're with them constantly. Whereas in other countries, the school day is the same amount of time, but teachers have more time to collaborate and work together rather than be with the kids every moment of the day.
Yeah.
And just the impact that could have on the school and on the culture and on the learning and the instruction. It's just that powerful time where teachers can learn from each other. We don't have that right now. We have to do that all in our own time, but if it could be built in and if it can be changed and built differently, that could be really powerful for our students and the results that we'll see. So
I wonder if us not collaborating effectively affects our ability to communicate to the students and to cultivate a culture of collaboration for them.
Right. Well, yeah, somebody had said once, and maybe I even saw it on Twitter. I don't know, I know who said it. The National Teacher of the Year, Sean McComb, he was doing a speech. And he said that people need to understand that the teaching conditions then become the learning conditions. So if you create a culture of collaboration for your teachers, then that will lend itself to creating that culture for the kids. So I just think about that all the time with atmosphere, with culture, with environment. We need to set things up the way that we're preaching to the kids,
Yeah.
you know? We need to have that in practice so that we can, model that for students and they can see that and see how that works instead of just saying, oh, let's collaborate, let's do this. We're essentially on our own every single day, and we're all reinventing the wheel all the time. When I need something, that I don't have, I'm creating it myself, when probably 1,000 other teachers have done that already. I think about teachers pay teachers. It's genius, and most of the resources that I like to use in my classroom, I've bought on Teachers Pay Teachers, because I know that a teacher created it. They know what's going to work best. It worked well for their kids. It will work well for my kids. Just that whole idea of we don't have to do this alone. A lot of times we feel isolated, we feel alone, we feel stressed, and it doesn't have to be that way because everybody's doing this work, and if we just shared it, it would take some of that pressure off. So there's just so many things that could elevate our teaching profession, if we had that chance to collaborate, and it just wouldn't feel so stressful all the time.
I think not only does it give teachers the ability to network with each other and get the best of everyone. Think of it as like this big conglomerate of teachers, all of those voices in there, free, open collaboration. You're going to get something greater than the sum of its parts, right? But even more so than that, when you're planning and you're creating lessons and you're getting lessons from others and you're figuring out how to use it with your students and you're cultivating those connections. Like you said, Teacher Pay Teachers is something that you found, you've personally vetted it because you've used it yourself and you can attest to the value there. But through that whole process, you're reshaping your mind about what learning looks like because you're learning throughout that entire process. And I think more so than just like practicing what we preach, I think it's us learning how to collaborate helps us to build into our lessons what a culture of collaboration is versus like, okay, we're going to jigsaw this and you have this role, you have this role. Like when you assigned, it's not collaboration, right? There's not enough choice in there. It's not open enough.
Yeah. I always come back to one particular example. So when I began teaching, our district was really pushing Reader's Workshop and Writer's Workshop. So I did a little bit of research. I thought that I had that put into practice, and I was very proud, okay, I'm doing Readers and Writers Workshop. And then Walled Lake had this model called Teacher to Teacher, where a person from each building would spend some time doing specific research that was provided by the district, and then we would go and watch a teacher in action doing Readers and Writers Workshop, and then we'd spend a year learning about it and then bring it back to our own school and be a lab classroom where our own colleagues would come in and see it in action. So I come back to that because it was such a powerful experience for me. I had read the research, I had read all the books, and I thought that I was doing it right. But to go out and see it in action in a classroom made it so clear for me. I was like, oh, that's what a mini lesson should look like. Okay, that's the types of things that I can do when the kids are working independently. Those are the types of ways that I can differentiate to meet the kids' needs. Oh, okay, that's what it looks like when we come back together for a share. It was so clear and powerful. And then going into a few different classrooms, I saw their own take on it. This worked really well for this grade level. This worked really well for this culture of student need in that school. It was amazing. And then to be able to bring it back and then to put my own spin on it and then to be able to share that with teachers, it's the most powerful professional development I've ever experienced. And every single thing that I do in my classroom that I think is really good, I got from seeing somebody else in action. So I can read, I can learn, I can go out and have professional development, but until I actually see it, it's not going to be as meaningful for me. And it's the same with kids. We can teach them this is what this looks like in science, but until they've actually experienced it themselves, it's not going to be meaningful for them. So that's the movement I feel that needs to happen for teachers, is we need to be able to invite each other in, show it what it really looks like with its flaws and all. You know, when people would come into my classroom, there were kids that were off task. There were kids that were getting sick. There were kids that were having problems with other kids. There were things that I wasn't fully prepared for. There were things that went really well and things that didn't. It was a natural environment, and people would still walk away from it going, oh, okay, now I see. So I always come back to that teacher-to-teacher model because it was so powerful. Everything that I feel comfortable with as a teacher now, I got from other teachers. That's where I think about even resources. Teachers are our greatest resource. We just don't have enough opportunities to utilize them.
Thinking from an online learning environment perspective, have you had the opportunity to look at a holistic online learning environment?
It's something that I've been interested this year and have learned about. I was at the symposium that you put on, and I visited different school districts that have things like that in place. Like Fraser has a one-to-one iPad technology, so they're trying to do a lot of blended learning, even with little kids. I have some teachers at my school that are really interested in it. Actually, just this morning, I was meeting with a couple of my colleagues and our principal because we want to reconfigure our classrooms and make it more 21st century learning friendly. I want to get rid of desks completely. I want to have different options, different configurations that will make it just more realistic. I've dabbled with Edmodo, and we have an online adaptive diagnostic that we've put into place district-wide, which is iReady. We use iExcel with students. We have websites. We're using Twitter with our school community. So there are a lot of things that we've put into place that are utilizing the technology. And I know more and more people want to move towards blended learning. And it really can be the same for teachers. So if I can't physically go to your classroom, I would love to watch a video of you in action. What I got from that 1 hour of being in the classroom watching a full hour of Reader's Workshop, I probably could have done as well from videos. Just being able to share, having a shared drive where you can upload your resources and teachers can pull from those, that would be so beneficial. So definitely face-to-face is the most powerful, but that was 10 years ago that we were doing that.
Yeah.
We could do that now without having any sort of extra money for subs or, all the costs that are included in that, because it was costly, and that's the reason we had to move away from it, was because we don't have the grant money that funded that. So there's a lot of options out there that could help us continue that type of growth and that type of work. But teachers don't have the time themselves to put into it or get it going. Another thing is teachers feel like they need permission. So instead of starting a Walled Lake channel or instead of starting a YouTube channel, they feel like they need permission from somebody to say, okay, here we have this channel, now upload your videos. So that's where a lot of teachers feel stuck. They have these ideas and they have the tools for it, but they feel like they need permission to share. They feel like they need permission to collaborate. Some teachers feel like if it didn't come from the district, then they may be reprimanded for doing something that's different. So there are some pitfalls to this movement or this change, but that's where I feel like it could come from a bigger level than just a few grassroots teachers. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. What's your recommendation on navigating that? Those are some real concerns for teachers.
Yes.
And they don't always have, I don't know if you call it a mandate. Is that what word did you use for Twitter use in your district?
I said compliance.
Yeah, compliance. I mean, compliance or mandate.
I know it sounds bad, but it was really just, I wanted to show that I am interested in these new things. I wanted to show that I'm not just going to be stuck in my ways. I'm going to step out of my box and try new things. So I guess that's more what I mean. But yeah, for lack of a better word, it was compliance. I did it because I knew that's what the district wanted us to be doing.
For teachers can be that change agent, right?
Yes.
Like Twitter is an incredible informal learning environment, and it can be formal too.
Yeah. And it's funny, and I'm so sorry to cut you off, but it lends itself to this conversation. It's funny because before the district said, get on Twitter, we all thought we weren't allowed to be on Twitter during the school day. So the fact that our administrators and our superintendent were tweeting things during the school day and were encouraging us to tweet what's happening in our classroom, we needed that permission to know that it's okay, because before that, we thought we couldn't even have our cell phones out. Now we're using our cell phones in so many different ways in the classroom to utilize technology. But until then, we thought we weren't allowed. So that's where I think teachers really feel like you need permission. Facebook was so taboo. Teachers shouldn't even be on Facebook. Make sure you don't have pictures. There's always that line where if you think you're going to be the first one, or if you're going to try something that you think is going to be good, there could be a backlash. There could be some sort of reprimand involved. So it wasn't until we had our district leaders saying, get on Twitter and start sharing, that we thought, oh, okay, now we can. So leaders have to take risks, and teacher leaders have to. But then there are a lot of people who have these great innovative ideas. They just need that permission to take the next step with it.
What kind of an environment is the healthiest for teachers being able to take those chances? It's going to start with teachers identifying these tools, seeing their educational value, and then jumping into them in almost maverick-like style, right? But that helps that one teacher. Everyone else looks at that teacher and says,
Right.
oh, wow, Cindy's friending students on Facebook. Not supposed to be doing that.
Right.
When in reality, nothing came from the heavens above that is administration saying, thou shall not Facebook with students, like, right?
Yeah, BYOD is another example.
Yeah.
So many teachers, and I actually started trying it out with my third graders last year. For years, kids could not bring devices to school. That was cause for suspension. And now, all of a sudden, we're inviting kids to bring those in and we're utilizing it. But who was the first one to try that? Was there a backlash for that? Where did that come from? Somebody needed permission at some point to be able to say, okay, kids, bring those in. Let's see how we can use them. Same thing with cell phones. Middle schoolers are using cell phones for all kinds of things in the classroom now, and it's being encouraged. Whereas just 5 years ago, you'd get in trouble for having your cell phone in class. So we're in this time of this great change, but nobody's telling us we can do these things and we can't. And it doesn't always mean that we have to be told. I'm thinking about the MyBlend movement on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow I'll be at the Innovative Schools Conference, and there are a couple teachers that are presenting on kind of this grassroots movement of teachers coming together on MyBlend and, starting these chats and starting these PLNs. They probably didn't ask for permission for it. It was a couple people who just felt like it was a need, and they fulfilled that need. There are so many people I know, outstanding educators, that feel they need that. Okay, especially now, teacher evaluations, just all of these things that are spotlighting us and checking off to make sure we're doing this, 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 and this. Is this okay? Is that not okay?
You think no matter what, even if you have great teacher leaders around you, and I think you and I both are in agreement that great teacher leaders in a district are needed to kind of be the catalyst for pushing those kind of things forward. More so, you're going to have a group of people that need administrative approval for everything.
Yeah.
So like administrators aren't always going to be on the leading edge of all these things, right? A lot of times they're going to be gatekeepers releasing it. They might not even know that they're gatekeepers.
Right.
What kind of advice do you give administrators?
My advice is to start the conversations. And that's what I've asked for now with my district is, let's just bring some people in who want to be leaders and ask them, what can we have in place for you that can allow you to do that? How can we use your expertise? How can we use your struggles even? How often does a teacher get to speak to an administrator that makes the decisions? Very rarely. You can go to a school board meeting and you can speak up about something, but even that's not the right setting. Just like we want the teachers to collaborate with each other, teachers should be collaborating with their principals and their superintendents and their curriculum developers. All of the pieces that we have in this system that I've learned about this year, they're all separate from each other.
Yeah.
So I see now how the teachers are feeling about non-educators, and I'm seeing now how non-educators feel about teachers, and there's nothing in between. There's no communication. There's no collaboration. Nobody ever gets to speak to the other person to tell them how they're feeling, what they need, and it goes both ways. But why does it have to be that way? Why can't we start these conversations that go across the board, across the system, to start saying, here's what we need, here's what we feel. How about we try this? Are we allowed to do this? And maybe even administrators can be asking teachers, how is that working for you?
Yeah.
It should be a two-way street. So my best advice to any districts or any administrators who are feeling like the gatekeepers, start a conversation.
Yeah,
Communicate,
working in the open, right?
Yes,
it's how we're trying to design our classroom.
Yes.
And if everything is open, honest, everything's on the table.
Yes.
I'm working on this. I think it's a good idea. What do you think about that?
Right.
It's laying the groundwork of trust and respect, knowing that if I put myself out there and work in the open, that we can have a constructive conversation about understanding what's going on there.
Yes.
I was in a position as a teacher where I took on the mentality that I'm just going to do whatever the heck I want as long as it's good for kids, right?
Yes.
And looking back on it, I really regret not working in the open about it. Like I stayed in my silo, everything that happened in that bubble. Hey, my students are having a great learning experience from that. We have an awesome culture in our classroom of trust. I can provide feedback to a student, but another student can provide feedback to another student. A student can provide feedback to me.
Right.
We've got that environment. But I was so scared of being completely open with that in case any administrator might have said, you know what, we don't completely understand this. And most of the time it was they didn't understand it, but they were like, okay, do whatever you want because you'll take care of it. But there was never any sharing with my colleagues
Right.
with it. It was good for the 120 students that I saw on a daily basis, but like, what was the point beyond that? What change was it doing?
And think of how many teachers could have benefited from seeing that in action. Think about the administrators that could have learned and benefited from understanding that and
Yeah.
gaining an understanding. I actually think very similarly. I've always had the philosophy in that whole it's better to ask for forgiveness than for permission type of thing.
It's a motto
Just because,
to live by.
yeah, because I think teachers instinctively have that common sense and they instinctively have that understanding of what the kids need and the best way to reach that. Sometimes it is out of the box. Sometimes it is deviated from what the district has put into place. And there is a lot of fear that if that is shared with anybody, then it could come back. But I think this is the time to move away from that because it really is about communication. It really is about trust, understanding. Sometimes teachers feel that the people who might reprimand them don't trust them as professionals and don't trust their judgment. And I don't think that really administrators feel that way.
No.
It's a perception that we have as teachers that we need to move past. So the more conversation, the more dialogue that we have with those people, the more they'll understand our purpose for things, the more that we'll feel more willing to share. So we just have to there's so many walls. We just have to break down the walls. And we have to break down the walls between our classrooms. We have to break down the walls between our buildings. We have to break down the walls between our counties, our districts. We need to get the conversations going in all levels of the system.
Speaking of breaking down walls, what opportunities specifically do you see for technology integration in the classroom? Not really tool-specific conversation, just what do you see as the opportunity for a more blended approach?
I had a chance to see Arnie Duncan speak in Washington, D.C. last year, and he talked about a school where they were in the lowest percent of performance, and they made some drastic changes to create an environment that was more real life oriented. They had a veterinary clinic that was run by students. I believe there was like a store that, it was just really trying to implement some things that the students felt were meaningful and that the students could use the skills that they're learning in the classroom, making it more like real life. Mm-hmm. So I was very intrigued by that, and it really got me thinking about how unrealistic a classroom is, about how a lot of the things that we have set up, kids would never do on their own, kids would never do at home. I went to visit a school, Hillel Day School in Bloomfield Hills, and they've completely reconfigured things, and they have a maker space. And they had kids in there that were designing and building, and there was engineering going on and architecture and fashion and all these things, and they were so engaged. So I feel like utilizing technology in any way that could create that environment for kids where they can't wait to come to school and where they're given time and tools that they need to pursue interests and also take the skills that they need, all of the Common Core skills, math, reading, science, social studies, and put those into practice for things that make sense to them is what I see. I've referred to another kind of picture that I've seen that said, what do you want kids to do with technology? And there's the left column, make a Prezi, chat on Edmodo, whatever those things are that are the skills that come with technology. And then the other column is to drive change, to solve problems, to make connections. That's what I see for technology. So now I have to change my thinking of what resources do we have, technology-wise, that can help students do those things, to just think outside the box a little bit more than we've always done. I think that school is still very traditional. I think there should be more flexibility in schedules. I've even thought about how my daily schedule doesn't have to be so rigid, an hour for reading, an hour for math, about just integrating those things throughout the day. There's a lot to be thought about. And now in this year where I'm seeing all these different things, and it's like I just wish I had a year to sit through and put it all together and think about what my classroom could be like next year. Another thing that teachers instinctively do is to think about how that tool can help meet the needs of their kids.
Yeah.
So I might get comfortable with Edmodo. The kids get excited about it. It's something new. It's something different for them. But how will that impact the students' learning? So it has to be a balance of both. It can't just be, okay, I'm doing it just because that's what everyone's talking about, kind of like Twitter. Okay, I got on Twitter. I started to play around with it a little bit. Now I see all the possibilities that can come with it. Now I even think about, how is that helping my students? How is that helping me to be a better teacher? How is that going to help them be a better learner? These kids could probably teach us more than we can teach them about technology anyway. So now it's thinking about how to use that to elevate the kids' learning and to have them dig deeper. So with any piece of technology, you have to have both of those lenses. You have to think about, okay, I'm just going to get comfortable with it, but then I'm also going to decide, is it useful enough to spend time on it with my kids, and will it impact their learning?
Do you ever find yourself doing it the other way around, where you find a tool that fits the needs of your students?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. But I think teachers feel a lot of pressure to be up to date on the latest and greatest in technology. So I think oftentimes it happens the other way, where they think about the tool first and then how it can meet the students' needs. And I think it happens more organically, where you come across a tool that meets their needs, and then you can kind of dive deep into it. So.
Yeah. So you have a book coming out?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So something I've been very passionate about since I started teaching is bully prevention. And that's because I started to see it with my third graders very early on, and I was surprised by that because I always thought it was a middle school issue. More surprisingly than that were the students that were doing the bullying. I was very surprised by which students those were. It was really oftentimes very smart, sweet, just kids that you wouldn't expect. And so I started to rethink kind of my thoughts on what a bully is. And I realized I had this stereotype in my head of what a bully is. And that doesn't exist in real life. I've never had a student who's that big, dumb, mean kid who pushes people in the lockers. I've never had that before. I've never had that really airheaded, mean girl type of girl in class. I've had great kids who act like bullies.
Yeah.
So that was my shift in thinking, and that was my shift in my approach with my kids is they don't identify themselves as bullies. So if you try to tell them that what they're doing is bullying, they get defensive and they shut down because they are not bullies. And it's true, they're not. So it's that small shift of all of us act like bullies, and all of us have that bully within us, and it comes out. And we just have to recognize that that's what it is. And once you do that, and it doesn't determine your identity as a bully anymore, then you're more willing to take responsibility for your actions, and you're more willing to apologize and make things right and make a change. So that was a huge shift in my classroom, and it was so powerful. And then you could say to a student, when you said that to them, how did you make them feel? Bad. Okay, so what were you acting like? A bully. Do you want to be a bully? No. So what can you do? I think people jump to that kid's such a bully, or this kid is bullying my kid.
And somehow they know that, right?
Yes, and most kids have no idea that their behaviors have negatively impacted somebody to a tremendous extent. So it's really about changing our language with them and being able to point out the actions that are bullying and not label people as bullies. So that's what my book is about. It's about a girl who does not fit the bully stereotype in any way, but she begins to realize that her actions have impacted others negatively, and she sees those actions as bullying and then is able to make that change. So it's called Diary of a Real Bully, and I actually wrote it 8 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And to have it as a real book is amazing. And my art teacher from my school is our illustrator. She did an outstanding job, and she was actually just named our school's Teacher of the Year this year.
Awesome.
So some really exciting things going on with that. I have a quote from State Superintendent Flanagan on the back just about this being a different approach to bullying, or a different outlook on bullying. So I'm excited about that as well. So this is my biggest passion coming to life.
Awesome. That's available for pre-order now?
Yes. My website is melodyarabo.com, and it's available for pre-order, and then the books will be available in early January, and all pre-orders will be signed by the author and illustrator. And then through that, I hope to be able to do workshops with students and work with parents, teachers, students just about problem-solving skills and teaching kids the right way to communicate when somebody is bothering them or doing things that bother them, because that's the other piece of it is kids never say what they want. They never say to stop. They never say, I don't like it when you do that. They just instantly shut down or want somebody else to take care of the problem. So that's the other piece of it that I'm really passionate about, and that I hope to have a platform for through this year as Michigan Teacher of the Year.
Awesome. We'll make sure to link out to that so that we can direct people that way. Thanks so much for talking with me today. And thanks for sharing your stories and your thoughts with anyone that can benefit from it. It's still early in the process, right? You've got so much more of the year to go with it. I just think you're a great ambassador for our state and for our profession, and I just want to thank you for your service.
Thank you so much for having me and having such great dialogue about teacher leadership and about technology and what schools could be like. So, thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to MyBlend Stories. For more, visit myblend.org. That's MYBLEND.org.